All right, Grizz, we are into it. Why don't you do me a favor, introduce yourself, tell my listeners who you are and what your company does.
Hi, I'm John Grizz. I'm the CEO of ICS Water in Golden, Colorado. And we build machines to help industry recycle their wastewater so that they can use less water in their processes and also maybe help recharge local supplies.
Nice. Well, let's. What inspired you to do this? What and what's the most rewarding part? Like, how do we get into this whole gig here?
Really interesting. Sister Deborah and I have done several startups together, all technology based, all spin outs from the Department of Energy. So we've been involved in nuclear power. We did pandemic modeling. We've done a medical device. And we kind of looked around a few years ago and said, well, what do we want to do that would have a nice global impact? And it turned out that water is, of course, a huge issue. So the question was, how could we innovate or find an innovation that would have a big global impact, but we didn't have to invent anything, because that's a different process. What we wanted to do is turn an invention into a product, create a business model, sell it. And so, being kind of B2B people, we're not consumer product people. We looked at industrial wastewater, and it turned out that some folks at Los Alamos Lab and other places have done a ton of research on how to take the worst water in the world, like water with benzene in it, for God's sakes, and hydrocarbons and stuff like that. Not just water that's got some, from some municipal source, but water that's really contaminated. And that water is generally thrown away. And so instead of throwing it away, now for a lot less cost, people can recycle it and reuse that water.
It's interesting. So, I mean, while we're into this, like, what is the biggest challenge that you experience, in developing this and scaling the company?
Well, it turns out that with a lot, what R.C. Clarke said, any reasonably advanced science will look like magic. And it turns out, going to industry and saying, look, we can save you 90% on the cost of dealing with your wastewater was incredible, meaning not credible. They just don't believe it. They've been doing this forever. And the techniques they use are hundreds of years old in some cases. And so it really is a case of us having to show and then be able to prove to people that we can transform, and recycle their water.
Yeah, interesting. Like, how do you kind of walk through, like, what is a case study in your world? Is it just the water that went back out? Like, how do you guys just determine success and case studies and all that sort of stuff?
All right, so let's take an example of like a small chemical manufacturer. And in this case, it's a chemical manufacturer that makes precursors. So they make chemicals that then Dow would take and make 1 billion gallons of something out of. So they're constantly changing their setup, and their wastewater constantly changes too. So we can go in and analyze the entire spread over, say, a year of what they're spending on having that wastewater hauled away, what's in the water, and then how to treat it using our reusable media and our sort of innovative approaches to segmenting different kinds of contaminants. So let's say the method for treating hydrocarbons is way different than the method for treating sulfur compounds. And so you have to kind of balance that out. It's really a lot of science. But once you can put them into a slot, then you can take a look at, well, what's the throughput? What's the CapEx? What are the operating costs going to be? And you can pencil this out really in short order and prove to people, like in this case, where they were paying $5 a gallon to haul away their wastewater and to have it burned, for God's sakes. And now we can recycle that water and give it back to them for 25 cents a gallon. So, if you tell somebody you're paying $5 a gallon, you're going to pay 25 cents a gallon, they say that's incredible. Like, not credible. So you have to really work when you're introducing it. It would be sort of like, coming up back when the hard disks were, 5.25 inch, and handing somebody a 1 gigabyte, static memory chip and saying, okay, this is going to replace that. All you got to do is plug it in. And they're like, what? I mean, it's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And really, I believe the reason this became such an issue is because the guys at Los Alamos, when they looked at, how are we going to treat industrial wastewater, they were looking at mining runoff. They were looking at oil and gas, produced water that comes up with oil and natural gas. And they had no preconceived notions about how to treat it. what they did was say, okay, how do we attract these certain kinds of molecules in a really efficient manner in order to concentrate them? And so that's what you end up with, is a tech that really was from a completely different perspective. And going back to the hard drive ideas, if somebody said, well, we want to make a really small hard drive, but we got to spin it really fast. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Why don't we step back and look at the problem from a different perspective? And so that's how ICS Water came to be.
Wow. So I guess what have companies typically been doing in the past? I mean, for the layman out there, for people that don't know. So these big companies that you're talking about, what are they doing right now that you're coming in and saying, I think I have a solution for this? Like what do they typically do if you didn't exist?
Well, they would literally have somebody haul their water away.
Okay.
Or they would use an older method, which can be really expensive. And sometimes, to be honest, they're not even using the right older method. Somebody sold them on reverse osmosis, which is really just designed to concentrate salt. But it's not a general, treatment system for industrial wastewater. But we've seen from China all the way to, Chile, where people have been tricked by the reverse osmosis community into and so they're getting back like 10 or 15% of their water instead of, with our method, you get back around 98% of your water. That's how well we're concentrating. So or they're building really, really large sort of conventional systems, which require lots of space and lots of time. And with the ICS Water machine, dirty water goes in, and a couple minutes later, clean water comes out. It's that fast, that simple.
And in their world, are they thinking that they're taking your clean water and putting it back into the system, or is it where does it go after that? I guess.
Well, hopefully, it goes back into the system.
Right.
Now, in cases where, let's say, a chemical manufacturer again or a mine, they just need to treat the water to the point where they can dispose of it into current disposal methods, whether that's a city sewer or they've got a disposal permit that lets them put it on the ground, right? They don't have to, we're not talking about getting, water to drinking water standards.
Right.
It's called fit for purpose water.
Yeah.
And it means that what you're trying to do is get the water to the point where it's usable or you can get rid of it without screwing up the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you discuss what you do as a global thing of just water being very, very important in our whole ecosystem here, right? So like, how do you usually kind of fit your narrative and what you do into this, like, I'm in the Great Lakes here. I'm in Michigan, so we got a lot of water around us. But maybe for other places that don't, like, how do you sort of say this is why we do what we do?
Well, all right. So it's not always about drought conditions or water scarcity. In your case, you're getting farm runoff, phosphates and nitrates, and they cause algae blooms, and then they affect all the water.
Right.
So, that's the key, is that it's going to be specific to specific problems. Now, we're looking at acquiring a new bioreactor that would, again, everything we do is sort of better, faster, cheaper. We're looking at acquiring a new bioreactor so that we can go to farmers and say, look, this is a really good way for you to be able to reuse that water that's running off of your farm. Or at the very least, please don't put it in Lake Michigan. I mean, it's a huge problem. And the phosphate nitrate problem is just enormous in farming communities because you're right. Generally, with the exception of, say, the Imperial Valley in California, where you have farming, you generally have water. That's why people farm. Right. And, but contaminating that water is a really bad idea, especially if it flows downstream. And then you get, hell, Mississippi gets algae blooms. Gulf of Mexico gets algae blooms. And it's all because we're using fertilizer. It rains and it runs off into the natural environment. So let's stop doing that. Right. Let's stop contaminating. But up till now, there's really not a cheap, fast way to do it.
Yeah.
So that's our focus.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's pivot over just a little bit to maybe your team. Like, talk a little bit about your team, who does what in it, and how big is it, small is it? Like, what kind of team do you need to execute what you're talking about?
Well, right now, because we're a scale up, we've got a pretty modest sized team. There's, half a dozen people that work day to day. And then we have a couple dozen other people that we use when we need them. Like, we don't need a full-time chemical engineer.
Right.
So, he's actually an investor. Part of my pitch is, oh, you're a chemical engineer and you want to work on this project. That's great. So write a check for $50,000 and put it into our crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And then what we'll do is we'll let you work here for free so that you can help increase the value of your investment.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so, and how do you sort of think about scale in this? Like, where do you go? How big does it get? How do you accommodate all kinds of different scenarios that you talked about, right? Like there could be a lot of different scenarios of the types of runoffs that you're talking about. So how do you accommodate all of this?
Well, all right. So this requires some focus, which is why we haven't gone into farming yet. Right? We started in oil and gas. We're doing mining. We're doing chemical manufacturing. Obviously, there's landfills, and then there's general manufacturing and gas stations. I mean, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So who's going to take it everywhere? And the answer is not us.
Right.
We took a patent, designed commercial industrial products, proved they work, proved the business model works, how we sell, how much everything cost, what kind of good margin can we get off it, and then how do we scale it? Mm-hmm. It's going to be an existing company. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of interesting for our investors because we're not saying, hey, we're going to go public and we're magically going to be all over the planet. No, we're going to sell the company to somebody that's already all over the planet. Yeah. They've already got a sales team in Singapore. I don't want to build a sales team in Singapore. I'm sorry, that's just not what what our team does. Yeah. We're sort of like people that make the movie. We're not the distributors. Right. We're not worried about streaming rights, and we're not turning it into a cartoon or a video game.
Saturday morning cartoon.
So it's very focused what we're doing, and that's why we've got a really nice short-term horizon for our investors.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about them real quick here before we wrap up. Let's talk a little about maybe key factors like what do you see that investors would be interested in of just what you guys are doing, and just kind of what are some of those key factors into your company?
Okay, so beyond the financial returns, which we've done really well so far with the modest amount of money that we've accepted as investment, it's the mission. Quite often, especially sort of today, it's hard to think that you could write a check for $200 or $250 and make a difference on the planet.
Yeah.
But with us, you can. And that's why we have 2,600 investors already. We've got some anchor investors, a couple dozen of those guys who are generally high net worth individuals. They helped us get going. Then we went to crowdfunding in order to raise from the public. And very few people that have invested in us will actually buy a machine for $500,000, $2 million from us. Right. But they like the idea of putting their money to work, to grow, to do something that's good for the planet.
Yeah.
So with that dual mission is really what we're hanging our hat on.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that dual mission is awesome. I mean, I think any company that has that right now does really well in crowdfunding because you can just see it. It's more than just the money. You can kind of see the bigger picture stuff. I think the vertical you're playing in, it leans into this mindset. That's great. So where should people go just to kind of dive in and learn a little bit more, learn about you guys, your background, history, all that sort of stuff?
Well, look us up, ICS Water, on all social media, and you'll get who we are as a team and what we're focused on. But also go to ixwater.com to learn about the company. And it's going to be heavy. That's websites built for our industrial customers. Yeah. But if you want to know sort of the big impact, that's when you go to StartEngine, startengine.com, ix-water. And we explain it in a way that makes it relevant to a crowdfunding investor.
That's great. That's great. Well, Grizz, I appreciate you taking time every day. I've been watching you guys for a couple of years now.
I know. You and I have been buddies for several years.
I've been watching it.
I love able to work together.
Yeah, it is great. So I appreciate it. And I tell everybody, man, please go check you guys out. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's really interesting and good for the planet. It definitely checks off both my boxes, the investment side plus the, hey, I would like to have the planet around for my children. Just little things like that. Just the little things.
I mean, positive social impact by a very small group of people. I think it's really, unique.
It really is. Grizz, I appreciate you taking time out of your day, and let's get back to raising some capital. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
There you go. Thanks so much.